All right, so this is my duotoned Godzilla. Every local color, like his tongue, his skin, his scales, is going to be duotone. Let me give a little bit more complexity to his toenails here by giving them a little bit of highlight. Instant pedicure. But the real advantage of digital coloring is that I can play with those colors as well. So I can make a duplicate of all the darks, and then I can do one of my favorite tricks, which is taking the color balance and shifting the darks more towards the blues. And then taking the lights, duplicating that, and shifting them more towards the warms. I can also just play with their saturation. And that's the true value of digital coloring, is its flexibility. Ease of alteration. And so then maybe those are the colors I really want. All right. So that's one down. Now the beauty of it is it's a perfectly clean spot illustration with nothing as a background. So I can save that as a PNG. It's good. I can combine it with other elements like that red circle. I can use my old friend, the shape tool, and create a perfect circle behind. And position it exactly where I want. And color it exactly as I want. Okay, so I'm going to save that for now. And this is duotone cut edge color behind my EPS. Also, because I have that vector EPS as my line work, looks kind of interesting without it, I can keep adjusting that in various ways. I could color it any number of ways underneath that same vector. Or I could take that same vector, duplicate it, rasterize it, and change its color. For instance, I could make it white. I can even give it a drop shadow if I want to. So lots of reasons to kind of work with the vector. To get very clean digital work. And the strength of a spot illustration to me is that it works on almost any background. So I always talk about t-shirt designs, because t-shirt designs, not everyone wants a white t-shirt. You might have different colored t-shirts. Play a little bit with the rising sun there behind. And these layer effects, you just double click on the layer and you can play with these options. And they work really well with vector shapes. And then maybe a gradient over the top and take its opacity down. Oh, that's looking good already. So many options, so many options. And so what I'll usually do for t-shirt designs is I'll make 3 backgrounds, white, black, and middle gray. And if it works on all 3, then I know I've got something that's really flexible. And that means it will work on not just different colored t-shirts, but it will work on different colored websites, on different types of textures, with different poster backgrounds, so on and so on. All right, so I'm going to call that finished for now. Maybe I'll upload that as a t-shirt design. And add, with the next project, maybe add a Godzilla font in there with it. Okay, another example that uses a different type of coloring. Just going to go through the process again. Let's see. Forgive me while I navigate to it. So, by the way, when I do these cards, these are called marker comps. So I'll draw them with just ink on top of pencil, then I'll just use Copic markers, which used to be called advertising markers. But they're just felt tip markers where you can play with different color options. The problem with that is you have a limit of how many colors you can buy, and I always run out of my favorite ones. And so I have to come up with color solutions that use kind of funky colors, like so. But it helps introduce me to the subject. Whereas with digital coloring, I have an endless amount of opportunities and options, which are always fun. All right. So there's a big difference between this and this. Right. But now I'll take the older example, the vintage Godzilla example. First, I'm going to open up the ink lines that I did on top of my pencil sketch. So it all starts as a sketch. Always starts as a sketch. And instead of the red full rising sun, I have the old imperial rising sun behind it. And this is maybe one of the most useful tools I've found in Photoshop, one of the most useful techniques, is how to clean up black line work. And I learned it early on as an illustrator because I started as an editorial cartoonist in the late 1990s. But I was very timid about my cartoons, and so I never inked them, I only penciled them. But then I'd use Photoshop to turn them into ink, which took a lot longer than it needed to. And it took me about 2 years to decide, well, I just should ink these already. But it really helped me learn how to clean things up and to make things look good, which is invaluable. So the first thing you do is you get a good scan. This is scanned at 600 pixels per inch, because these are rather small drawings, only a few inches. But then that allows me to use levels and to get a very clean control of the shapes and the line work. And you see my pencil sketch just kind of fades away, my ink lines remain, and I just have to play with the thickness of them. Now I'll show you a technique here that's very helpful. So let's say I had only a pencil sketch. It was very faint, kind of like this. And I want to make it into clean line work. So what I do in that case is I desaturate it, because often when you scan pencil, you'll get lots of different colors. So you desaturate it so it's all just different grayscales, but you see how broken up it is. Okay, then I'm going to isolate the grays from the whites by selecting with the magic wand just the white shapes, and then selecting the inverse, so it's everything that's not pure white, and then duplicating that on its own layer, like so. I had to turn contiguous off. I forgot to do that, so I've got some extra whites I need to get rid of. All right, now I go up to filter, and I Gaussian blur it just a little bit. So not nearly that much, just a tiny bit, just to soften it. So just by about a pixel or two. And then this is the trick. I duplicate it on top of itself several times. And because of the soft opacity of the blurring, it will turn it into almost a marker line. Then I'll combine all those duplicated layers together. You can see how many there are. Excuse my voice. And then I'll use the magic wand tool to select all the empty space. And then again select the inverse. And now this time, instead of just duplicating it, I'm actually going to fill in with black at 100%. And there, from a bad pencil drawing, I have a pretty smooth ink drawing that I could use. Now I could do that, or I can just work with the better ink drawing I already had. So let me do that instead. But you can see that that's a pretty big difference from this to this, using Gaussian blur and duplicating. Now remember, the more black line work you leave, the less coloring you probably need to do. But you need to like that line work. All right, now I'm going to save this as a PNG, bring that into Illustrator. But before I do that, I can clean it up a little bit. If there are any lingering spots, especially where your ink smears, you can go ahead and clean that up. And Illustrator will do a fair job cleaning some of this up too. And of course, you can always clean it up in Illustrator as well. All right, so this project is really about working between the two. So I'm going to save this as a PNG and as a test. This is just a process along the way to the desktop. Then I open that one up in Illustrator. And I'm going to use the simplest image trace, which is silhouettes. But I'm always going to be using the thresholds here to decide on the thickness I want. And I do this with every cartoon I do now. I always convert the line work into a vector. And it's like having the option of using several different pens after you've already inked the drawing. All right, so I think that works pretty well. So I'm going to expand that. I don't see anything that needs too much cleaning up. It's nice and clean, all vector shapes. Yeah, all right, so then I'm going to save it as an EPS. And this will be the Godzilla Old, well, I'll be kind, I'll say vintage, inked line work.